Welcome to Secrets of Stand-Up Comedy. I'm Richard Francis Williams. I'm going to tell you everything I know about comedy so you can be a better comedian. I made 30 short comedy videos in 30 days for TikTok and Instagram Reels, and I learned so much from that experiment.
Dear Diary, transgenderism has become so normalized in our country, in our very culture, that nowadays if I find myself caught in a discussion about it, I barely even bat an eye at my erections. Something must be done about these erections.
They weren't stand-up comedy videos. It was me creating my own format called Dear Diary. I started off looking like myself in the beginning, and then later it was all black and white like this. I went into a character that I used to do way back in 2007 and went to color.
Dear Diary, I am 100% behind body positivity. I'm anti-fat shaming. I believe in inclusion. Love the skin you're in. Lizzo is gorgeous. Basically, as long as I don't have to fuck them, they can do whatever they want.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
It's wild. It's that immediate sense of accomplishment. You can start seeing the views coming in. That was a great aspect of it. Unlike these videos where I have to wait till the next day when it posts, and you don't get as many views on a long form video, especially something that's educational as opposed to comedy. But I would go back and forth as soon as I would post them at night, see how it's doing on Instagram and Facebook and how it's doing on TikTok. One of the first things I learned is that anything that's controversial is going to be kind of shadow banned or censored. So I had some videos do extremely well. One, I think, I'll show all the details here. One did 31,000 views on Instagram and 19,000 on TikTok. TikTok, because I used Carly Simon's song, even though they replaced it with basically the same version of the song, it may be a different production of it. It's the same song. It may have just been a greatest hits as opposed to the one I use. They took out everything. They muted it, and then I could put the song on there. After that point, it didn't get many views. That one did tremendously well. But when I got to some material that was, just kind of in the zeitgeist, things that people argue about politically, I did one of them about abortion. And I was actually making fun of myself. I'll play that for you now.
Dear Diary, I am firmly anti-abortion, except in the rare case that I get some ugly woman pregnant.
Hypocrisy!
Yeah, so you see, it's not really about abortion. It's about me being a hypocrite. And I didn't realize this, but it came out recently in the news that Facebook and Instagram, owned by Meta, is purposely downranking those types of videos that have any of those topics in them. So keep that in mind when you're making your videos. If you're talking about politics, if you're talking about social issues, I mean, I don't know what they consider hot topic issues now, but with an election coming up, they're really cracking down on it. So that was very interesting to me. And I had made one prior. I actually made 31 videos in 30 days because I took one down and I did another one. That too was an abortion joke. And again, it was making fun of myself, but I could tell that it was not getting any views. It got like 35, where the normal one would get 200 at that point. And I said, okay, I don't want to ruin all my other videos and my attempted reach. So I'm going to take it down and replace it with another one. And then for the second one, I said, you know what? Screw it. I think it's a funny joke. I'm not going to, if they censor me, they censor me. If it hurts my reach, it hurts my reach. So that's one of the things I learned. Make sure you're aware of that. And if you want to say, hey, I'd rather get my stuff out there than, cater to that market. Just like if you're going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show, you can only talk about certain things. I know that's an old reference. Or if you're like, hey, this is what I do, and I'm going to put out what I want to put out. Realize you might be hampered unless you have a big following. Then I don't think it'll matter as much, because I had 0 followers on TikTok when I started. I created a brand new account. I didn't have a TikTok at the time. I had to start a brand new Instagram. I didn't have an Instagram then either. Another thing I found was initially, because Instagram would feed over to my Facebook page, I have 3,700 friends on there. And feel free to add me on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. It's all the same thing, Richard Francis Williams. Oh, and I have some important kind of funny personal stuff at the end of this video. I made it into a Vice documentary about the Adult Video Awards. They showed a clip of my performance in '97. Also, I had a tree fall in my backyard. I'll tell you that stuff at the back end here as I go through this first. And also, for the month of April, I do these one-on-one personal coaching. I can't talk. I haven't done this in a while. It's weird. I haven't made these videos. I do one-on-one personal coaching with comics. If you've watched this channel, you've heard about it, where you send me your material and a video of it, and then I'll go through it with you on the phone. I go through it ahead of time so that doesn't count against the hour-long session, and then I'll work with you personally, punching up the material, giving you my opinion, giving you some direction, excuse me, telling you how to kind of rearrange the bits. Normally I charge $100, but I had a lot of comics messaging me saying they're saving up so they can do this. And I know money's tight for people. So I'm doing it $50 per session for the month of April. Just for April. I don't have enough time to do it beyond that for now. But for April, it's just $50. Okay. The next thing I learned was something I talked about with the Seinfeld method, where you have your calendar and you put an X for each day you do something. So if you say, I'm going to write for an hour a day, and you do it, you go to your calendar, you put an X or a check mark, and then you start building a chain. And it's a psychological pressure not to break the chain of doing that writing each day. And it works. And I saw how effective it was, both with this channel when I was making 100 videos in 100 days, and then with the shorts, the TikToks and Reels. I don't know what to call them. There were days I didn't want to do it. There were days I'd get maybe 500 views on something, and I'm like, what am I doing this for? And then I realized that it's a daily practice, and I would do it. So it forced me to create something each day. And I only used probably about 20% of old material for these reels, for the comedy shorts. I was creating new stuff every single day. And not all of them were pure setup punch. Some of them were just ideas that I had floating around in my mind. So it was a very good practice. It kept me, no matter what else was going on in my life, it kept me doing it. And now that I've stopped, it seems impossible to start back up again. And I want to kind of rework it. Maybe that's just something I'm telling myself to procrastinate. But yeah, you get in the groove like that, and it creates pressure to keep going. And that's how you get stuff done, a little bit each day. The next thing I realized was that the type of videos I was making, in the long run, they may catch on. I was starting to get followers. I'm up to like maybe 106. None of this is earth-shattering. It's not like, 31,000 views is great, but that's not going viral. Getting hundreds of thousands of views, to me, that's viral. But it was certainly great for me. My 5th video got 31,000 views. I'll take it. I think if you post clips of you doing stand-up, it's already more understood. So I was trying something very different, and it was just me set up. I mean, you've seen it. People are used to seeing stand-up. So if you can chop up your act and have solid jokes in there, again, I don't recommend crowd work. It's more and more comics, established comics or name comics, are speaking out against it. But if you're able to put out TikToks that are just bits from your stand-up with you on stage and an audience laughing, there's a lot more places you can put that to get more views. There's a Reddit, I don't know if it's a subreddit or Reddit page, I don't know the lingo, but it's Reddit/stand-up. And I see people post stuff on there all the time. And when I put some of these videos on Reddit before they started taking them down, I would get a lot more views. And so again, it's kind of to break out of the box of what people expect is great, but it takes time for that to work. And if you're able to do that successfully, then you create a whole thing for yourself. And that's what I think I'm doing if I continue doing this Dear Diary segment. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, I liked coming up with the jokes. I like coming up with, okay, what copyright-free music can I use that will accentuate this? And then the later ones, I would add, right at the end of it, when I would cut it, I would put a little sound effect or a voice saying something. They were all just things I got from iMovie or a couple that I did myself. So I was able to find within that context or that format something to give it a couple more boosts, the music and the sound effect at the end. A lot of that goes back to without constraints, you can't be fully free. So if you limit what you're able to work with, you won't be all over the place, and it'll force creativity out of you. It's like when I was writing for the Best Damn Sports Show period, I had to write topical jokes about sports, things that happened the day before or were currently happening that day. I didn't have a choice. And so when I could write about anything, I wouldn't write because, do I write about politics or sports or my own personal life? But when you're locked into something, these had to be short. They couldn't be more than a minute for certain, like for YouTube Shorts. I haven't put them on there yet. You have to keep it short. You have to be concise. I could add a sound effect, so that was a creative aspect of it. I could add music, but there wasn't a lot I could do within the format, and it forced me to be creative within that format. One of the interesting things for me was when I switched from how I normally look to the character, that didn't make a big difference in terms of views. I thought that it would, because I performed in that getup at a youth hostel in Hollywood once, and I had people, audience members, coming up and wanting to take pictures with me afterwards. I'm considering maybe doing some stand-up with that wig, and I mean, it looks kind of ridiculous, but to try to stand out nowadays, it's challenging. And when I do a character, it's almost easier to write for. That's one of the other things I learned from this process. In doing it every day, I didn't have a game plan for what type of material I would be writing or what jokes I would have. But when I put the outfit on, the costume, it started going in one certain way. I started kind of embodying that character. It's always been easier for me to write for other comics because I can see who they are. It's hard for us as comedians to see who we are to the audience. So I know myself extremely well. I've been with him my whole life. So I know all the facets and some that I'm not even aware of. But I'm not sure how I'm seen on stage at times. And I've obviously aged throughout the year. I have this crazy beard now, which I want to shave. I don't want to shave it off. I want to have it trimmed, but I can't do that because then it looks all messed up and I don't know a place to go. There's a couple places in my hometown, but it's all, I don't want to look like I'm trying to be in a hip hop group. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying there? Here's the final thing that I learned from making these videos. Keywords seem to be the most important thing. The hashtags. And I would duplicate them for both, but I'm not an expert at this by any means. This is the first time I've ever done it. I'm 53 and I know technology to some degree, but not that much. So I don't know the ins and outs of gaming the algorithms, or like I'm not a guy who's going to put a kaboom in there to attract the younger crowd. I just try to rely on solid material and making sure it's funny. But the hashtags, the topics I was talking about, I didn't want to overdo it with the hashtags and have too much stuff in there. And I didn't want to underdo it. I also didn't want to give the joke away with the title or the hashtags. But it was a dilemma because sometimes the punchline would have been a great hashtag and it would have gotten more eyeballs. But one of the things I put in there, and it was early on, so maybe this was prior to Instagram suppressing some topical issues. When I put inflation in 2 of the videos, they did really well. And I'm going to show you one of those videos. It's probably the second or third highest ranking video. I just thought it was funny. Dear Diary, because inflation is still so high, I won't be taking any big trips this year. I'll just do what I always do. Have a staycation down in my Jew tunnels. But I had people comment, they wanted to argue with me about inflation in the comments. And I'm like, this is just a joke. I'm just goofing around. So figure out that aspect of it. It's a whole other world. That's the thing with comedy now. As I've said before, there's good and there's bad. So the good thing is, back when I was starting out, you had to impress a handful of people. And if they didn't like you, it was tough luck. You know, if the club owners didn't like you in your hometown, you're kind of screwed. It's still kind of like that. If the agents and managers and network executives didn't like you, or just didn't like your act, they weren't into what you were doing, it's really hard. I mean, where are you going to get hired? You're not going to get your own TV show. The good thing nowadays is that you can move past them and go directly to the people and build your own audience. And it's always about building an audience, because you can get a TV show, but if nobody in the general public cares about it, then you're not going to have that TV show very long. So that's the great thing now, is that I could, with my iPhone and a little wireless, I'll show you, microphone, I can do this from my home and put out content and develop a following and people that look forward to this and want to come see me do stand-up. The downside is, in the old days, all you had to do was be really funny and you could have a whole career. There was definitely networking that you had to do and marketing, but not like there is today. Now you have to learn editing and lighting and hashtags and trends and so much stuff that it's like you have 3 full-time jobs: being a writer, being a performer, booking the things, all the other technical stuff. And so, yeah, but I'd rather have the opportunities that I have now and have to learn all that instead of having to please a handful of people. Because I'm not great with that aspect either. I'm too bullheaded sometimes. I fight for jokes. One of the shows that I work for, that ultimately led to me getting fired because I didn't think the show was funny enough. And I would fight for jokes and say, no, I really think that this should be in there. And so, yeah, you can learn the technology. There's plenty of people that know it, that hopefully they won't gatekeep. I hate a lot of the sayings that are running around now. But ask other comics, hey, can you help me out with this? How many hashtags should I use? Do you find there's a good time to release these? Should I do it outdoors? Should I do it indoors? Whatever. It's an exciting world out there. But realize this. For those 30 days, I had a lot of the same people watching because it was my friends on Facebook, I could tell, were watching. On TikTok, I don't know anybody except for maybe 2 or 3 people. They loved it. They were appreciative of it. One of my friends, he was going through chemo. He said he looked forward to it every day. But once you stop, it's quickly forgotten about. There's so much material on these social media apps. So if you're going to do it, don't burn yourself out. And I tend to do that sometimes. Like, maybe I shouldn't have done 30 in 30 days, but I wanted to do it because it was an experiment and see where it went. And now I'm reevaluating where to go from here. And also my life got in the way. But that's that in a nutshell. It was great to do. I encourage you. Obviously, the importance of getting your material out there. Again, I don't worry about burning material anymore. I have 80% was brand new that I can go and do on stage, and I'm going to record myself doing it on stage. Those jokes, as many of them as will work on stage that are transferable to that format. And I'm going to release reels and TikToks of that because nobody's going to remember any of the stuff that I did before. People's minds don't work like that. There's billions of these reels, and if somebody goes through my pages and sees it again, they're not going to be disappointed. Oh, he cheated me. They're like 30-second clips. It's like a highlight reel. So definitely do it. Put the time in. It doesn't take that much time. Some of the setups for it, of me sitting there writing, I reuse them. I'm like, I don't feel like filming. I'm just going to go through the footage because some of them were 17 seconds. Some of them were a minute. I have a minute of me doing this and finding the right reaction and lining it up. So I did probably about maybe 8 of the later ones with the wigs that I just used over and over and over again. So that's where that's at. All right. I talked to you about the one-on-one coaching. A tree fell in my backyard a week ago, and we had one last snow and ice storm. It smashed. I'll show you some pictures here. It was really bad. I was in the house when it happened, and normally I wouldn't care, but it sounded like a freight train was coming through. And I'm so glad Bingo and Willie were in the house at the time, and that I was in the house at the time, because while it looks big, but when you are right up in front of it, it's ginormous. And these tree branches are so heavy. So it was up against my neighbor's house. They did sell the house, the one next door on the one side. And I called my insurance, and they were giving me a hard time. They weren't going to cover the removal from my neighbor's property. And that's the only way that I could have it removed, because it snaked through the 2 property lines. And I got to meet the neighbor for the first time. They were up making sure the house was ready because the adjuster was coming, or to do an assessment or something like that. And I said, yeah, your insurance has to cover it. And he's like, what? And I could tell he was going to give me a hard time. I said, listen, I'm trying to get my insurance to cover all of it because they have to remove one long part of a tree. And I think it's ridiculous that they're trying to say only my side they're going to cover when it's both sides. The day before, so I worked through that. The insurance company was going to cover it. And then the evening before, when I was preparing the backyard for the tree service to come in, I went out and I was only looking to my right-hand side. On my left-hand side, another branch had crashed onto my other neighbor's garage. And it was the same situation, but in this case, the majority of the tree was on their structure, and they weren't covering that. So I asked the tree guy how much he would charge me, and so he said $350. I said, all right. So it wiped me out because there's an insurance deductible, and you probably don't care about any of this, but it's $1,000 just for the deductible. And then there's a big hole in the fence in 2 spots after they removed the tree, and Bingo got out, and she was running around the streets of Schenectady. So I had to go chase her down. Thankfully, she didn't get hurt. But dealing with that, my van's still not great, but what am I going to do? I'm very grateful. I'm grateful that you're still watching at this point. I'm grateful that I'm alive and my dogs are alive, and it happens, and I'll write a joke about it. That's the wonderful thing about being a comedian. You can write jokes about it. And then finally, a buddy of mine sent me the video I'm going to show you, and yeah, it was nice. I haven't watched the documentary yet, but it's probably for YouTube. It's from Vice. I'm sure you're familiar with them. They did it on the Adult Video Awards, which I did when I was 26 in 1997 as Bill Clinton. And then I did it, and this was before Lewinsky. And then in 99, they had me back because the Lewinsky stuff happened in 98. So I did it a couple times. And so it's kind of weird seeing myself. I haven't seen that video in so long because I don't have a VHS, and I don't even know if I still have the tape. But yeah, I'll leave you with that. So I'm going to be making more videos on this channel. I needed to take a break and regroup and kind of figure out what I was doing with myself. I'm going to be going to open mics, just have a few more loose ends to tie up, and shoot me an email. If you want the coaching, it's Richard Francis Williams, it's Richwilliamscomedy@gmail.com. Richwilliamscomedy@gmail.com. And it's in the description as well. And I'm going to be making shorts for this channel to boost this up a bit because I really enjoy making these videos. All right, I'll see you next time.
All with money to buy advertising from us.
Sex sells, baby, and everybody was buying.
In 1997, we hired a really good Bill Clinton impersonator to come out and hand out a sex scene award.
That I'm going to do everything in my power to protect your freedom of speech.
I thought Bill would like that.